Hi everyone. I wanted to share something a little bit different with you. It's a short creative writing story, and it's written by the channel Sal Rachele and told with a little bit of creative licensing by me. I do have it written down, so I might be looking down at times or shuffling papers, so I apologize in advance. And I just want to lead into it by saying I'm sure we all know and have heard that there are many beings from all over this universe, not just this galaxy, that are basically on the edge of their seats, so to speak, waiting to see how this double dimensional shift unfolds. And now planetary ascensions have taken place many times before. That in itself is not new. It's the fact that this is a double dimensional shift where Gaia has made the choice that as she rises, those that inhabit her have the choice, and they can also consciously rise as well. And that's new. This hasn't been done before. So the planet can rise and all of that, but not, this is different, double dimensional with the people and everything else that calls her home. So it really is, doing it with her consciously. So you can see why this ascension from 3rd to 5th is said to be the greatest show in the universe. And we know that there are some beings, that a small portion, that really don't want this to occur. And then there's a greater number that aren't certain that we can do it. They actually don't think we can, but they're really fascinated, and they don't not want us to succeed. They're just kind of neutral and just waiting to see whether we're successful or not. And then we've got, which we know we are, but then we've got the biggest lot are all the super loud cheerleaders that are there screaming, jumping up and down, telling us, you've got this, just hold on, not much longer. So, this, as we go into it, you can see why this is the greatest show on earth from a different perspective. Not greatest show on earth, greatest show in the universe from this different perspective. And also, before I tell the story, there's this common misconception that whatever term you feel most comfortable with when it comes to defining the ultimate creator, that it is a perfect being. And from what I understand, the Godhead is evolving, it's growing, it's learning, all along with all its infinite aspects and parts. So it is not perfect. It makes mistakes. But what it does do is have this process where it's always perfecting itself. So not perfect, but perfecting. There's aspects that are perfect, but those other aspects that are evolving and in the process of perfecting themselves, and therefore that process in itself is perfect. So that's just my understanding. And again, with anything I say, take it or leave it. It's completely up to you. So now I'm going to share this story which really touched me. And I wouldn't say that it puts it in a light-hearted perspective, but certainly paints it in a new light, and one that I think is very relatable. So anyway, let me lead into this. Okay. Oh, my cheeks hurt from smiling so much. I'm so excited to share this because I really love it. I think it's a beautiful story. So it seems the father had his own ideas on how creation should unfold. So these are our cosmic parents. He had his own ideas on how creation should unfold, and he wasn't the best listener when the mother would voice her opinions. And is this sounding familiar at all, ladies? Or men that find themselves with the same issues? So the mother's ideas were just as valid as the father's, but it seemed that she had a problem with self-confidence, and she just let the father have his way most of the time because it was the easiest and most peaceful way to be. But the more the father dominated things, the more hurt and rejected the mother began to feel. And so she began to doubt her equality with the father, and it really didn't look like they shared things very evenly. He would be out having a good time exploring creation while she'd be at home there, or she'd be the one worrying about the children's needs. So one day this all built up and they had this really terrible argument, and he wanted everything to be light and happy, but she didn't feel that way. And so he accused her of being, a party pooper and spoiling the fun, and being too emotional. And so because he'd held in all of these ungodly feelings for such a long time, when they all came rushing to the surface, they kind of exploded, and he lashed out and he hit the mother. Excuse me. Well, she wasn't going to take that, was she? And so she decided that was it. She was out of there. Unfortunately, at this point, many of the children thought that it was the mother's fault that mum and dad weren't getting along, and they blamed it on the mother's emotional nature for the reason that this fight had occurred. So most of the children made the choice that they were going to stay with the father, and he felt that he had to be super responsible. After all this gallivanting around, he couldn't really refuse to take them in and care for them. So the mother and the small group of children that decided to remain with her moved to this tiny planet far, far, far away from the father, where she could live without his domineering influence. And this planet eventually became known as Earth. Anyway, meanwhile, the father raised 90% of the children, and so, as they would, they naturally took after him. Many of them came to actually despise the mother, and so they denied their emotional nature in favor of the father's cool, rational detachment. They felt that they had to control the feminine aspects of themselves, and they invented all sorts of rules and procedures for what they considered proper self-expression. Later on, many of the father's children came to Earth, and with that same domineering nature, took over the more feminine races that were developing there. The father's children set up civilizations that worshipped law and order and the masculine principle, and the mother retreated into the depths of the planet to escape the cold cruelty of the unbalanced souls who proliferated on her surface. The father's children, in their hatred of the mother, treated her with little or no respect at all. They raped her land, poisoned her air and water, and imprisoned her children in rigid and authoritarian schools and churches that were set up to mold them into the father's image of perfect obedience and intellectual supremacy. Oh, sorry. So in the meantime, and unbeknownst to all the father's children, the father himself was busy mending his own ways. Being the first masculine energy, he didn't have any men's groups or any therapy sessions that he could go to. And so it took a while for him to realize the mistakes that he's made and the error of his ways. When he finally did forgive himself and the mother, and he reached out for her, he discovered that she was still pretty angry with him for the abuse that he and his children, well, their children, but his children, had heaped upon her and the earth. And by now, the father's children had grown pretty arrogant and tyrannical in their behaviour, and now the father himself was actually becoming really quite displeased at the way that they were behaving. So he realised, though, that they were a mirror of his own attitudes, But he also knew that they would have to heal along with him if they wanted to stay with him. So he appealed to his children to stop abusing the mother, but most of them wouldn't listen. And so finally the mother and the father could take no more abuse from these children and told them that they either needed to treat the earth with respect or leave the planet. And by this time, because they'd been working in unity, the mother had regained enough of her trust in the father that she decided that she was going to respond to his desire for them to reunite and get back together. And last page. And so, because this separation had caused them both much pain and suffering and heartbreak, when the father had hit the mother in that fight that they had, the force and the shock of it had forced the mother to slip down into the third dimension, and she got trapped there. The father retreated after the fight to the seventh dimension, where his celestial heaven is. And now that they were reuniting, they had decided that they needed to compromise. So he was going to descend down from the seventh realm, and she was going to ascend up from the third, and they were going to meet together in the fifth dimension. So with great excitement and anticipation, they sent out invitations to the whole entire universe, and souls responded from all over for this grand reunion. But they were really quite saddened and dismayed to find out that only a very small portion of their earth children had even bothered to respond to the invitation. The mother began preparing her body, the earth, for this great occasion, and she instructed her children to put on their greatest cosmic finery, light bodies. And the children realized that they had a lot of healing to do. They had to forgive their parents and to forgive themselves for all the suffering that they had experienced as children of dysfunctional parents. And they had to embrace both their masculine and their feminine sides and balance themselves in love and understanding. And as they began to do this, they started to experience this joy that they had never, ever, ever felt before. And this filled their hearts so much with this newfound radiance. And from here, they went forth to embrace their cosmic parents. So, yeah, that's a different perspective on what's happening at the moment. Like I said, one that puts it in a different light, and for me I find that really relatable and actually quite a beautiful story and a beautiful way to look at it. So yeah, I just really wanted to share that with you and hope that it gives you just a little bit of a smile or upliftment, even hope maybe, that there is really this beautiful story playing out here, and the marriage of our parents is, you know, the marriage of ourselves as well, and it's one giant reunion that we're heading into. So yeah, I hope that helps, and I hope you're doing well. It's been very intense. Yeah, so thinking of you all, and look forward to the next time I get an opportunity to chat with you. Big heart hugs and love. Bye.